All right, it's Transformation with Tony Saldanha. Tony, thank you so much, as always, for your time.
Always a pleasure, Seth.
So the title here is, I mean, let's be honest, we as capitalists are going to love the title $700 million.
A good clickbaity title if I ever saw one.
There we go. And so what are we talking about, Tony?
What we're talking about is the $700 million that Amazon has declared it's investing to retrain its people on technology, which is absolutely mind-blowing, Seth, because if you kind of think about it, Amazon is arguably the company that has the most technical capabilities around. And for them to say, we need to actually retrain our people, and we're going to spend, $750 million to do that, is very indicative of an underlying conviction. And that's the conviction that I think we want to talk about, which is um, you're going to have to retrain your workforce, and by the way, yourself, to thrive in the fourth industrial revolution, because it doesn't matter, if you happen to be very good like Amazon is on technology today, you cannot sit on your laurels. You're going to have to retrain yourself.
So we as people, each person that's seeing this can go ahead and do something. And we talked about the fact that I'm doing something
Yes.
because if I'm going to say it, I should be doing it too, right? So that's easy. And if you're a manager of a team of people, you can certainly suggest that they do it. Okay, fine. Let's just say that someone that's watching is a CEO of an organization who could move amounts of money around like $700 million. Does that mean if the organization that's way out front is spending $700 million, that there's no question about the fact that I should spend double that right now? Should I be spending $1.4 billion kind of in total on my digital transformation, whether it's education of my employees or not?
Whether companies want to spend, $1.5 billion or something like that is a different question, I think. The two things that I would tell that CEO, firstly, you actually do need a digital literacy strategy, and you have to put some skin in the game behind it. So just don't take a couple of academic HR people and say, create a plan, right? I think you're going to have to do more than that. You're going to have to figure out how much you can afford, and that may vary based on business models. So if you're in an industry that's fortunate enough, that's not going to be as tech driven as Amazon's is, then maybe you need a little less than $700 million. But the first thing is have a digital strategy and put some skin in the game. So that's the one thing, yeah. And that's purely on training, retraining, right? And then secondly, of course, is the whole digital transformation thing, which is then you're going to have to go invest in the technology and creating the new business models and digital products and stuff like that. And that's a totally separate investment, as you and I have talked, Seth. The digital transformation industry itself is a $1.7 trillion industry, which is already an indication that many companies are throwing a lot of investments into it.
And so, that digital literacy is going to help us out, right? If I'm at my enterprise, I'm going to be able to figure out how I can talk about where I want to go before I decide where I want to go, which is where we've spent most of our time. So that digital literacy piece, it's going to slow me down, Tony.
Yes, it
So I
is.
feel like I don't want to do it. But what you're saying is, yeah, okay, fantastic. You can put a blindfold on and run inside of your office, but you're going to run into a wall soon because you have a blindfold on. So the digital literacy gives you the goggles there, right?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yes, and you're going to have to do both in parallel, meaning the actual investments into digital transformation and the digital literacy thing. And I think you're poking at something that's very, very important, which is digital literacy needs to be both up and down the organization. Um, let's start with the CEO and the leadership of the company, right? Um, if you don't know enough about what technology can do to understand the possibilities, then you do have that blindfold on. So you really have to start with yourself and your leadership. And by the way, leadership doesn't have to become software programmers or whatever it is, but they absolutely have to understand what technology can do to set the right goals and the right direction. So that's a relatively lower bar, but it's a minimum bar that nobody can afford to miss. By
You
the way,
don't.
it does.
You go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to add on that in terms of the literacy up the chain. The second part of actually going up the chain is the board of directors. So there's an interesting study from McKinsey that said that, only about 20% of board of directors actually know enough about digital to effectively lead for the future. And by the way, in the US, only about 5% of all boards have a digital director, as they are called, so people that understand technology. So part of the digital literacy push for companies is to check whether even upstairs there is enough understanding of digital.
And so, we talk about bias all the time. I guess an enterprise's bias could be ignorance.
Yes, yes,
So,
absolutely.
incorrectly informed is bad, but not informed at all is potentially worse. But,
It is.
either way, you got to bone up on both, essentially.
Yes, you absolutely got it right. And as I was saying, both up and down the ladder, because leaders can't just say, all right, let's get our HR people to do a lot of training. I don't think we're thinking simplistic solutions like that anymore, because I think up the ladder, it's all about understanding enough about where disruption could come from
Yeah.
using digital. Down the ladder, what you're talking about is actually a workforce strategy, because the the uh, the um, the accountant of the future isn't just going to be doing debit or credit. They're basically going to be instructing AI algorithms on doing financial analysis. The dock worker of the future isn't going to be moving trucks
Hmm.
or goods. They're also going to be tweaking algorithms on optimizing robots that are moving these goods. And so you're talking about essentially a totally different workforce. And so when you kind of think about down the ladder, digital literacy, it's all about how many of the current people that I have are going to actually make it, and what do I do with them, and then how do I retrain some of them. This is basically what AT&T is doing. So like the 700 million, maybe we should call this $1 billion, because AT&T a few years ago actually decided to invest $1 billion in retraining 100,000 employees, because it's the same issue that they had, which is, we could go ahead and replace 100,000 people, but then you wouldn't get 100,000 people with that kind of capability, and they would not know AT&T.
Yeah.
So they've basically decided to spend $1 billion retraining, those people. So that's what you have to do down the ladder as well.
All right. So no matter what here, we've talked about a couple of different things, digital literacy, being a nice new piece for at least in our conversations to add here. But no matter what business you run, Amazon has affected your business, because Amazon has affected the customer experience of every single customer that has come in contact with Amazon. If they come in contact with Amazon, they've come in contact with your business. So they've affected your business no matter what. They're spending 700 million, so get on it, type of thing, right?
That's well put. Get on it.
Tony, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. As always, can't wait for the next one.
Hey, likewise, Seth. Always a pleasure.